Hello, hello. So in this video today, we are going to be repotting up some Gloriosum philodendron and some Plowmanii philodendron. These two are specifically unique because they are terrestrial growers. They like to grow on a growing stem that almost crawls along the ground and then sinks their roots in. When I initially got these two plants, I only had 6-inch terracotta pots available, and quite honestly, they have outgrown them. So in order to encourage them to sprout some new growth and keep crawling along the ground, quote unquote, we're gonna be upgrading them to 8-inch terracotta pots. So let's go. All right, so let's first do this Gloriosum. I'm gonna go ahead and pot the Gloriosum into the 6-inch pot that I got. It doesn't seem quite as large a growing stem as the Plowmanii, so we're gonna start with that. So let's go ahead and get this guy out of the pot. You can see here the growing stem is nicely above the soil, nice and firm, no rot. So this one was happy in here, but it's gonna need a little bit more room to be able to produce some more leaves. Don't mind my dog barking, it's a little dachshund and she barks at pretty much everything, so hopefully she'll be stopping here momentarily. So we're gonna get the soil out away from the leaves. I have been the unfortunate victim of leaf damage during repotting when I have unfortunately let the soil fall onto the leaves. I can't remember which plant it was, but I remember it nearly made me cry. I had one of the major leaves fall off because of some potting soil that fell on and broke the stem, so I'm always very, very cautious while I'm getting these guys out of the pot. I'm gonna hold this in here so it doesn't just fall out. I've also been the victim of roots that have been pulled out and ripped by the soil that has come out with them. So we're gonna set this guy aside for now. Okay, and let's just see what we have here, because I know that this one's not done as well as I've wanted. It's been pretty healthy, but the growth hasn't been quite as vigorous as I had hoped. So let's see if we can determine if we've had anything going on here that shouldn't have been going on. So right away, I'm starting to see that we definitely had some root rot going on here. There is one good strong root here. That just came off, so that's definitely rotted. So that tells me that even though I have been meticulous about not overwatering this guy, even my best attempts have been, it's been too wet for him. So we did have some sphagnum moss in here, which we're going to not be too anal about tearing off, because I don't want to ruin any of the roots that are good. But we're going to just go ahead and repot him. Pull off a little bit of that sphagnum moss, because clearly that's retaining a little bit too much water for this plant's liking. Let's see if we can get that out of there. Good. All right, so the base of the growing stem certainly was not rotted. It is not soft in any way. We do have a few really nice roots here. The majority of these little feeder roots are quite rotted, but I'm not going to take them off because they don't seem to be doing the plant any harm. But hopefully we can encourage some better root growth in this bigger potting situation. And I'll just be really, really careful to not overwater him. You can see he has 3 new leaves here, and the way they grow is they'll grow on this growing stem here and then pop out a growth point, and that's where those leaves emerge. So hopefully he'll enjoy his bigger pot, and hopefully it'll encourage a few more of these growth points to pop out and produce some leaves. Put him here for now, roots out of the way. Okay, here we go. So essentially, when I repot these guys, I've got a nice new potting mix here. Plenty of bark, plenty of perlite. I'm going to just rest that growing stem on top of the soil, but I do want to make sure that those roots are nice and submerged so that they get plenty of water to them, but not so much that it causes root rot. So let's see what that looks like. Now, when I pot these guys, since the growth seems to be coming in that direction, I'm going to pot him almost at the back of the pot. And I'll probably put him about this high. So I'm going to hold this here while I submerge the roots, get him nice and stable. And then I will go ahead and probably use a landscaping stake to make sure that he's nice and secure, because these terrestrials, because they're not fully into the soil, tend to flop over sometimes. So I'm just using my hands here to get some good bark going and some soil. And I'll make sure when this is all done and I'm happy with where it is in the pot to make sure it's nice and stable, and most importantly, make sure that that growing stem is not submerged under the soil. So, all right, so I think we're pretty good here. Let's give this a nice little shake, make sure that settles nicely. Okay. And he should grow into the pot. Now, some of my aroids do not like to be overpotted, meaning they don't like to be in pots that are too big. You do have to be careful with the water retention. Bigger pots do mean that they will retain more moisture, so you need to be mindful of that. Actually, he's pretty stable without the need for a landscaping stake, but so there we have our newly potted Gloriosum in its nice new 6-inch pot. So I'll keep you posted on how this guy's growing. I'm hoping to get another growth point coming out of here, so it can put out some new leaves for me, but I think we're good to go with that one for now. Moving on to the Plowmanii. Okay, so my Plowmanii came, and the oldest leaf did come a little bit damaged. It did have a little bit of spider mite issue, not from the cellar, of course, but since it's been in my care in the hot tropics. I did have to put him in stakes. If I recall correctly, he did not have as an established a root system, so I use these little landscaping stakes to make sure that that growing stem is nice and secured in the soil. So I'm very careful when I pull these out, because sometimes the roots like to grow around them. Since I've gotten him, and I've had him for about probably 2.5, 3 months now, he has put out a new leaf. He did unfortunately lose one leaf, but I think he was relatively old and it was time for him to come down, or at least that was what I'm going to tell myself. So again, we're going to gently hold the plant, let the majority of the soil fall through, shake it up and let it get loose, but still stabilizing the plant so we don't break off any of those stems. And then we're gonna just and I never let the soil bulb plop out, because as I mentioned before, it has broken roots of mine before. Instead, I like to cup it with my hand to get as much soil to come out by just shaking as possible, and then I will take the bulb once it comes out and hold it in my hand to give it some support. So same thing, let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, so I like to tap the roots and see, so I can get some of that soil taken off there and get a better visualization of what the roots look like. So we're gonna tap, 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 tap. Again, the growing stem is not mushy, it's not rotted, so I'm really pleased with that. This one seems to actually be doing pretty well as far as not suffering from any root rot. So tap, tap, tap. We've got one good, healthy, strong root there, so he's gonna really enjoy, actually 2 really good, strong roots. He's gonna really enjoy that new pot, I think. So he's going into the big one, remember, the 10-incher, so hopefully that's not too big for him. Ideally, it would have been an 8-inch pot, but I gotta tell you guys, for the last 6 weeks or so, or even 8 weeks, between Lowe's, which I have 2 of, and Walmart, I have not been able to find any terracotta pots. I don't know if it's the great terracotta pot shortage of 2020 or what's going on here, or it's just supply and demand and they just can't keep them stocked up on the shelves long enough, or maybe there are a lot that are getting damaged. I don't know, but I have had the hardest time finding the right size terracotta pots. So every time I see one, I always just grab it, whether I need it or not. So this guy actually has some really great roots. There's one here at the front that's doing very well, and then another growing tree with lots of feeder roots in the middle. And then a last long one that's quite long and very, very healthy that's actually growing some feeder roots here at the end of it, if you can see that. So I'm very happy with this guy. Let's put him aside and prepare our pot. All right, so this one's going in the big kahuna pot. Move him to the side here. Okay, now with these guys, I was top watering them, but quite honestly, I started getting a little paranoid about that water congregating at the base of the stem there on that growing stem. So I actually switched over to bottom watering, and I gotta tell you, I think that that's the way to go with these guys, because I think, this could just total speculation, but I'm gonna go with it. I think that because they're being bottom watered, it's encouraging those roots to really reach a little bit more and plant themselves in and anchor the plant, which is certainly something that they need, especially because they can be a little bit top heavy with the great foliage that they have, just being propped up on top of the soil. So I think I'm going to continue with the bottom watering. Now I've actually put a little too much soil in here because I forgot how deep that root system is going to go. All right, so we're going to make him a little hole like that, and we're gonna do the same thing that we did with the Gloriosum, and we're gonna put him towards the back. Actually, you know what? Because this is such a darn big pot, and who knows, maybe there will be something that grows from the tail end, but we're going to, I'm gonna pull some more soil out here. I'm gonna put him right in the middle. There's plenty of space for him to grow in either direction comfortably, and that way I'm not hedging my bets in the wrong direction. And I by no means am an expert on these types of philodendron. I did quite a bit of research before receiving these two guys, but I did not notice whether or not they only grow in one direction or if they can pop out new growing stems and nodes from either side once they're cut. So let me straighten out my pot here so we don't have topsy-turvy soil. And I'm going to make sure he's not too low in the pot as well, because as I mentioned earlier, I do not want that water to congregate right at the growing stem. So we're just going to keep holding him until I feel like he is stable, and gently place him on top of the soil. Make sure the roots are nice and buried. And then because this potting soil is fairly moist, I actually did just open up a new bag, so it is pretty moist. I'm not going to water these guys. I'm going to let these guys dry out naturally over the next week or so before I give them another good drink. But that being said, because I'm not going to be watering them just yet, I do want to make sure that all the air pockets are out of the soil so that they don't dry out too fast. All right, so let's see. I think we're good there. I'm just going to push it down at the edge of the pot, see where our level is. Okay, and this guy, I think I am in fact again going to have to use landscaping stakes. And I don't know why, because this one has actually a better root system than the Gloriosum did, but it may just be because of the way the leaves are oriented. It may be making it go to either side. So I'm going to add a little bit of soil towards the back there just to make my level a little bit more even aesthetically. There we go. And I just use orchid bark. Honestly, I use whatever's the cheapest, whether it be at Lowe's or Walmart. I usually, when I fill up my basin, this is my soil basin, I usually add about, gosh, maybe half to 3/4 of a bag of perlite, half a bag of potting soil, and about an entire bag of the potting bark. And I found that that retains a little bit of moisture, which is great. Not too much moisture, but what it does primarily is it really aerates the soil, and it allows those roots something to grow into and around without it being into just the dense soil composition. Okay, so now I'm going to place those landscaping stakes back in to make sure that he's nice and stable, and be careful not to damage those roots. Okay, got one in, and we've got two in here in a second. Very carefully. Okay, I think we're good. And I'm just going to use a spray bottle of water to just get rid of the soil that's around that growing stem. Just to make sure it's nice and clean and it's not going to create some bacterial infection, which will lead to rot. There we go. Okay. And that is our Plowmanii repotted. Thank you all for joining me. This is Monica coming to you again from the potting patio. I love to chronicle what I do in here, small or big projects. Some of them can be a little bit nerve-wracking and a little bit of a hope and a prayer, but I'm glad that you all are joining me to be a part of that. I know that when I started my my houseplant addiction, I'll say, it was actually October 15th last year when my husband took me for my birthday to literally whatever nursery I wanted. And of course we did have a budget, that would only be reasonable. But it was really a magical day, and my husband was such a great sport, and we mapped out the most efficient route the night before, and we started out early in the morning. The first nursery I think opened at 8 a.m. and we were there with our little cart and ready to go. And I was picking up some landscaping plants because that was my first passion, and I live on a 10-acre horse farm, and so of course there's plenty of land to be cultivated there for gardens. And I happened to go to this little store in New Smyrna Beach, Florida, and they happened to specialize in houseplants. And I thought to myself, you know, I'm just gonna pick up a couple of these. They're actually really cool. The foliage is what drew me. My first one was the Alocasia amazonica, otherwise known as the Polly. And I picked up that one, and I forgot the other one I picked up, but they came back with me as office plants. And slowly I started to add to my office collection and doing some research on the plants that I had purchased. And before you know it, I was starting to collect Philodendron pink princess. I imported that from Puerto Rico. Then I was on to Monstera albo borzigiana, which I got from a seller in Wisconsin. I stumbled upon a great deal. She had a pretty mature plant, so I stumbled on that one. When they were just starting to get popular and really kind of the prices were getting gouged, I should say, and but I'm lucky to have that one in my collection. And then I fell in love with calatheas. They were by far had the most variety. I liked the fact that they're a little bit of a drama queen because it allowed me a little bit of a challenge. I'm always up for a challenge, and I like to care for things and check on them daily. And before you know it, fast forward, 10 months or so, now it's August, and I have an entire potting patio dedicated to my entire houseplant collection, and it has four-tiered shelves that are full of aroids, everything from alocasia to philodendron, anthurium I've imported from Indonesia. So it's really taken on a little bit of a mind of its own, and luckily my husband is incredibly supportive, and it gives me a hobby. It gives me something else I can do, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it, and who knows what the future will hold. Hopefully I will be able to keep in touch with you guys and keep you posted on my houseplant journey and how the care of these guys go, but I appreciate you sticking with me and tuning in to see how it's going. And we'll be around hopefully together to celebrate my 1-year venture into the houseplant world. So thank you again for tuning in, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.